The Omega Man made Charlton Heston the last man on Earth and buried some genuinely strange secrets in its ruined Los Angeles. Did you know its famous crucifixion ending wasn't in the original script and completely reversed the meaning of the book it's based on? Or that it gave American cinema one of its first interracial kisses? 15 facts, starting with the ending. 15, the alternate ending that turned the hero into Jesus, the Omega Man's unforgettable final image. Neville speared through the chest, dying in a fountain, his arms flung wide and legs crossed in the unmistakable pose of Christ on the cross, his untainted blood the cure for humanity, was a late addition. According to Charlton Heston's own autobiography, in the arena, that crucifixion scene was not in the original script. The film's most iconic, most analyzed moment, the one that turns the whole story into a Christ allegory, was grafted on, likely to suit Heston's larger-than-life persona as Moses and Ben-Hur. That single change reversed the meaning of Matheson's book entirely. In the novel, the twist is that Neville is the monster. The last human is a bogeyman to the new nocturnal species, which is why it's called I Am Legend. The film throws that away, making Neville a martyr who dies to restore the old world. The ending, you remember, didn't just change the scene. It inverted the point. 14. The author said it was so far from his book it didn't even bother him. Richard Matheson, who wrote I Am Legend, had a famously relaxed verdict on this adaptation. And it's brutal in its calm. He stated the movie was so removed from his book that it didn't even bother him. Not anger, not disappointment. Indifference, because the film had wandered so far from his story that he could no longer recognize it as his. Some viewers have gone further, joking that the Omega Man bears so little resemblance to I Am Legend that Matheson could arguably have won a copyright suit over how little was left. The changes were fundamental. Matheson's vampires became biological warfare mutants. His solitary siege horror became a political action movie. And crucially, his devastating final twist, that the human hero is the new world's monster, was discarded for heroic martyrdom. It's a recurring lesson in this series. The most influential adaptations often betray their source. Matheson's book outlived all 3 film versions anyway. 13. It featured one of the first interracial kisses in American film. The Omega Man made quiet history. When Neville finds another survivor, Lisa, she's played by African-American actress Rosalind Cash, and their romance became one of the first interracial relationships depicted in a mainstream American film, including one of the era's first interracial kisses on the big screen. Captain Kirk and Uhura had shared a landmark kiss on television in 1968. Here, it reached theaters. For a Charlton Heston blockbuster in 1971, released into a still segregated cultural climate, it was a genuinely bold choice. Screenwriter Joyce Corrington said Lisa was created deliberately in response to the rising Black Power movement, prominent in American culture at the time, to build an effective and charged dynamic with Neville. Heston wrote in his autobiography that this was Cash's first leading film role and that she was understandably a little edgy about the love scene. The film wraps radical racial content inside a popcorn apocalypse, a colorblind future built pointedly after a plague literally turned everyone the same color. 12. The screenwriter was a chemist who rewrote the plague to be plausible. The Omega Man's science has an unusual pedigree. Co-screenwriter Joyce Corrington held a doctorate in chemistry, and she used it. Matheson's novel blamed a bacterial plague spread by bats and mosquitoes that turned people into literal vampires. Corrington found that unsuitable for a grounded adaptation, so she and her husband John rewrote the apocalypse as biological warfare. A plague unleashed by a Sino-Soviet conflict that kills most of humanity and turns the survivors into light-sensitive albino mutants rather than supernatural vampires. It's a fascinating case of a scientist's sensibility reshaping science fiction. Corrington wanted the catastrophe to feel like something that could actually happen in 1971. Germ warfare between superpowers was a real Cold War fear, rather than a gothic monster tale. The vampirism was stripped out and replaced with pathology and paranoia. The result is less horror, more dystopia. The same lesson this channel keeps finding, that grounding fantastic premises in real anxiety is what makes them land. 11. The family are hippies twisted into a Manson nightmare. The film's villains are one of the most loaded creations in 70s sci-fi. The family, Neville's albino, hooded, torch-bearing tormentors, are led by a charismatic former news anchor turned messiah, Matthias, and they preach the total rejection of science, technology, and the old world that destroyed itself. They're a dark mirror version of the 1960s counterculture, the love generation reimagined as a fanatical, robed death cult. The timing was pointed. The Omega Man arrived shortly after the Manson family murders had horrified America and curdled the public image of hippie communes. And the film's family, complete with that very name and a hypnotic cult leader, channels exactly that fear. It's why Neville is repeatedly shown alone in a movie theater watching Woodstock on a loop. The last man clinging to the counterculture's hopeful peak while its shadow self hunts him each night. The 60s dream and its nightmare, fighting over the ruins of civilization. 10. Batman's Joker stole a scene from it. The Omega Man has a fingerprint on one of the biggest blockbusters of the 80s, and it comes from a famous fan. Tim Burton has cited the Omega Man as one of his favorite films, and its influence surfaces directly in his 1989 Batman. There's a scene where the family gleefully vandalize and destroy Neville's collection of fine art, on loan from a museum, reveling in the ruin of high culture. Burton echoed that beat almost exactly in Batman's celebrated sequence where the Joker and his henchmen dance through an art museum, defacing the masterpieces. It's a small, delicious piece of cinematic lineage. The anarchic joy of destroying civilized art passed from a 1971 apocalypse film to a comic book landmark 18 years later. The Omega Man is often dismissed as dated 70s schlock, but its images lodged deep enough in one visionary director's memory to resurface in a movie that redefined the superhero genre. Influence hides in strange places. 9. Heston watched Woodstock alone, and it's the film's saddest joke. One of the Omega Man's most haunting images is also its wittiest. Robert Neville, the last man on Earth, sitting alone in an abandoned movie theater watching a 35mm print of the documentary Woodstock. For what the film implies is the 100th time, reciting the dialogue along with it. It's a perfect encapsulation of his isolation, and a pointed irony. The sole survivor spends his evenings watching a monument to a mass gathering of humanity that no longer exists. The choice does double duty thematically. Woodstock represents the peak of the very counterculture the film's mutant family have twisted into a murder cult. So Neville is literally watching the beautiful version of the movement that's now trying to kill him. It's melancholy, satirical, and a little cruel all at once. Few post-apocalyptic films have captured loneliness so economically. Not with tears or monologues, but with one man laughing at a concert film in an empty room, again and again. Quick supply run, safely before dark. If this deep dive is earning it, hit like and subscribe, because we excavate a classic every week. Now, back to the ruins, starting with the trilogy nobody realizes Heston made. 8. It's the middle film of Heston's Secret Apocalypse trilogy. The Omega Man occupies a special place in Charlton Heston's career. It's the center panel of an unofficial dystopian trilogy. It's bracketed by Planet of the Apes in 1968, Heston as an astronaut on a ruined future Earth ruled by apes, and Soylent Green in 1973, his overpopulation nightmare with its infamous final revelation. 3 films in 5 years, each imagining a different end of the world, all anchored by the same granite-jawed movie star. The connections run deeper than theme. The Omega Man's producer, Walter Seltzer, went straight on to produce Soylent Green with Heston. Together, the trilogy captures a very specific cultural moment: the turn of American science fiction from the space-age optimism of the 50s and 60s to the pessimism of the 70s, when pollution, overpopulation, nuclear war, and plague all felt like plausible near futures. Heston, the star of biblical epics, became the reluctant face of the apocalypse, Moses, watching the promised land burn. 7. Heston fell in love with the idea on a plane. The Omega Man exists because Charlton Heston did some in-flight reading. According to accounts of the production, Heston read Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend during a jet-set commute between Britain and America, and became convinced there was a movie in it. A major star championing a project is often what drags it off the shelf. And Heston's star power was considerable in 1971, fresh off Planet of the Apes and a career of blockbusters. There's an irony worth savoring. The book Heston loved enough to shepherd to the screen is the very book the finished film barely resembles, its ending reversed, its monster reimagined, its author left shrugging. Heston fell for I Am Legend on an airplane, and then, with his collaborators, made something that Matheson said was so far from the source, it didn't bother him. The star's genuine passion for the novel produced a film that is, in the end, its own strange, funky creature. Sometimes love and fidelity aren't the same thing. 6. The score is weirdly upbeat. And it works. One of the Omega Man's most distinctive and debated choices is its music. Composer Ron Grainer, the man who arranged the original Doctor Who theme, wrote a score that is startlingly light, jazzy, and at times almost sentimental, playing as a strange, breezy counterpoint to the film's grim story of plague, murder, and the end of humanity. Where you'd expect dread, Grainer often supplies a cool, funky, early 70s groove. It sounds like it shouldn't work, and for some viewers it doesn't. But for many, it's part of the film's peculiar, unforgettable texture. The upbeat score reinforces Neville's strange domestic normalcy. A man in a velvet smoking jacket playing chess against a bust of Julius Caesar, sipping fine liquor, maintaining civilization's comforts amid total collapse. The music treats the apocalypse as almost cozy, which makes the eruptions of violence land harder by contrast. It's a bold, divisive, artistic gamble, and it gives the Omega Man a tonal fingerprint no other apocalypse film shares. 5. It's a different film from The Last Man on Earth, right down to the death. The Omega Man was the second crack at I Am Legend, following 1964's The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price, and comparing their endings reveals two completely different philosophies. Both kill their Neville, but the details diverge tellingly. Price's character is speared and dies in a church, and the film keeps more of the novel's bleak I Am Legend horror with a Night of the Living Dead grimness. Heston's Neville is speared but dies in a blood-red fountain, arms spread in Christian sacrifice, his blood a literal cure. The contrast captures how malleable Matheson's story proved. The 1964 version leans horror and fidelity. The 1971 version leans action, allegory, and heroism. And the 2007 Will Smith version would swing back toward spectacle. 3 films, 1 novel, 3 utterly different Robert Nevilles. The Omega Man made its choices boldly, trading the book's philosophical gut punch for a messianic action fable, and became, for a generation, the definitive screen version despite being the least faithful. 4. Real, deserted Los Angeles plays the empty world. The Omega Man's most convincing special effect is a city with no budget required, Los Angeles itself. The filmmakers shot Heston prowling genuinely empty downtown LA streets, achieved by filming early on weekend mornings, particularly Sundays, when the business district was naturally deserted and traffic was minimal. The famous opening, with Neville cruising a ghostly, windswept city in a convertible before machine gunning a shadow in an office window, uses the real, unpopulated metropolis to sell the end of the world. It's a technique that gives the film a documentary authenticity no set could match. the same principle behind many low-budget triumphs this channel has covered. Rather than build a ruined city, the production simply found the moments when the real one emptied out. The result is eerily effective. Recognizable landmarks standing silent and lifeless. A major American city rendered a tomb by nothing more than clever scheduling. The apocalypse, it turns out, is just downtown LA on a Sunday morning. 3. Whoopi Goldberg got the famous kiss. 21 years later, the Omega Man's groundbreaking interracial kiss earned a delightful coda decades later. In 1992, Whoopi Goldberg, hosting her own network talk show, invited Charlton Heston as a guest and asked him about the historic 1971 kiss with Rosalind Cash and whether he'd caught any flack for it at the time. As the conversation turned to Goldberg's wish that society could simply move past treating interracial relationships as an issue, Heston leaned forward and planted a kiss on the unsuspecting Goldberg himself, to her evident delight. It's a charming footnote that reframes the original scene's significance. Heston, often remembered for his conservative politics in later life, was proud enough of the barrier the film broke that he'd happily reenact it live on television 2 decades on. The moment turned a piece of film trivia into a warm, spontaneous gesture across the years, connecting a 1971 milestone to a 1992 talk show couch with the same actor bridging both. 2. Its DNA runs through the modern zombie apocalypse. The Omega Man's influence radiates far beyond its own modest reputation. As one of the key adaptations of I Am Legend, the novel that essentially invented the modern apocalyptic, last human besieged by the infected masses template, the film helped cement a genre. Matheson's book is frequently credited as a foundational influence on George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and thus the entire zombie genre. And the Omega Man is the version that brought that siege scenario to a wide 1970s audience in color with a movie star. Its specific imagery echoes forward. The lone survivor fortified in a home, surrounded by the infected, the daily scavenging of a dead city, the ethical horror of who counts as human. Every last person on Earth story with a barricaded hero and hungry hordes outside owes something to this lineage. The 2007 I Am Legend, 28 Days Later's Empty London, countless video games, they're all in part descendants of Neville's Siege. 1. The funky apocalypse that became a cult monument step back, and the Omega Man endures as one of the most beloved oddities in science fiction cinema. It's often dismissed on paper, dated, unfaithful to its source, tonally strange, wrapped in a divisively upbeat score, and unsubtle Christ symbolism. And yet, it has a permanent place in the archetypal hall of images for generations of fans. Heston alone in the Cadillac, the caped family with their torches, the empty city, the velvet smoking jacket, the fountain. Few films this flawed are this unforgettable. Its legacy is a paradox worthy of this series. The least faithful I Am Legend adaptation became, for many, the most iconic. A movie its own author found unrecognizable helped shape the zombie genre. A dated 1971 curio lodged deep enough in the culture to influence Batman and outlive far slicker films. The Omega Man proves that memorability isn't about polish or fidelity. It's about images that refuse to leave you. And these never do. Those were 15 facts most fans have never heard about the Omega Man. Which one got you? The crucifixion ending that wasn't in the script, or Heston kissing Whoopi Goldberg 21 years later? Barricade your answer in the comments before sundown. If this earned it, hit like, subscribe, and send it to the friend who still can't resist a good end-of-the-world movie. Until next time, watch the shadows.